Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. South Africa and Nigeria have been grey-listed by the global financial watchdog following denoting nations with shortcomings in tackling illicit financial flows. Now, the decisions were announced by the Financial Action Task Force yesterday. Morocco and Cambodia were taken off the list after improving their controls. For more on this, we're joined by independent economist Bongani Mahlangu. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika. South Africa being placed on the grey list, to my understanding, essentially means it has shortcomings in tackling illicit financial flow, which may raise costs for banks and asset managers. Exactly how intricate and how bad is it?
So basically, we should greetings to the viewers at home and also greetings to the team in studio. So I think basically it's understanding that this is grey listing, so that basically means or implies that there will be increased monitoring with regards to South Africa and the other countries that are grey listed. Then if there is increased monitoring and also it is picked up that the situation is not changing, so it would move to a blacklisting. So that's the worst listing that you'd find. So with regards to the impact thereof, and I think some of the things you have already articulated, is that you find that there is a reduction or a decrease in capital flows coming into South Africa, banking flows. So the integrity of the banking and financial system in South Africa gets undermined. And that makes life very difficult for our banks and financial systems to interact globally and even to some extent domestically as well. So you find that also investors tend to be disadvantaged on the basis that the risk in their investments increases. So that means the cost of investment also increases. And then also you find that there is a sovereign credit downgrade. And we know that when there's a credit downgrade, it makes the cost of credit it increases the cost of credit, more especially when you go into your foreign financial markets. So that's essentially what this grey listing would mean in terms of the economic impact into the country. But also, do remember that out of the 20 things of the legislative deficiencies that were identified, they were able to tighten 15 out of those from 2 acts. But then the 5 that was left, it was through regulation and practice. So now if you look at the regulation and practice, it speaks primarily to implementation of legislation. And that is why we got grey listed in the first place. So it was not much because of these deficiencies, but more on the implementation of laws, the ability to pursue individuals that have been involved in terrorism financing, the ability to pursue individuals that have been in your anti-money laundering practices. So people that are engaged in illicit capital flows, the ability to ensure that there is proper information of ownership of our companies, or I would say economic agents. So it was more about improving the application of these laws, and that is what South Africa could not adequately demonstrate to the Financial Action Task Force. Hence, yesterday on Friday, it moved to put South Africa under increased monitoring, and that is then why we have been grey listed.
We heard Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana hinting during his budget speech this week that grey listing was likely, despite saying last year that he was hopeful South Africa could avoid it entirely by not being placed on the list. What does this move now say about the wider reaching consequences for South Africa's financial system?
So thanks. So basically, with regards to the impact of the financial systems or impact on the economies, what I've stated when I spoke about reduction of capital flows, integrity of the banking system, so those are banking flows, investors having to price in the risk that they're going to invest in a grey-listed country or a country that has increased, or there is increase in terms of its monitoring. Also, the credit downgrade that makes the cost of borrowing for our country very expensive, and that means then each and everyone in the country would have to then pay more, because more especially when it comes to public debt, everyone in the country pays public debt. But then with what the minister spoke about in the budget speech, so the minister spoke about what they have done, and what they have done is that they have moved to eradicate or to strengthen the deficiencies that were there in 2 acts in particular. So that were your General Laws Amendment Act of 2022 and the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Amendment Act. So that's what they did. So they went and tightened those two legislative pieces, but then it was not enough. If you had heard the minister, he was also not optimistic that what they have done would be adequate when he spoke in the speech. So he even said that they had even developed a plan B, which he had not presented as to what it means in order to deal with the issues. And that's why I go back to say that why the minister spoke that way is that as so much as they have tightened legislation in order to present to the Financial Action Task Force, but he knew very well that there is no way within the short space of time that they could have adequately presented to the force how they're going to improve in implementation. And it's the implementation part of which out of the 20 things that we were supposed to do, or the 20 pieces that were supposed to or the findings that were supposed to strengthen, 5 were left to regulation and practices. And it's that 5 that the minister could not confidently account for, to say, how are we going to change our practices as this country within the space that we were given to present to the Financial Action Task Force. And hence, he knew that we were going to get grey listed. But as I said, there is still hope, because this is grey listing, it's not yet blacklisting. So then that means that the country can still improve its application of laws, more especially its risk-based approach when it comes to entities that must do all the work in terms of pursuing people that are involved in such crimes. Also, the individuals that work within those entities, the individuals that work within different government entities, that would be your departments and regulators and so forth. So if then our government can tighten those, that speaks to the 5 that remains. And then the likelihood is that will be removed from the list.
So in the midst of the situation we currently face, where does it place South Africa's international financial standing around the world? Because as far as matters stand, internationally, South Africa is now on par with countries like Syria, the DRC, South Sudan, Haiti, Burkina Faso, and so forth.
Exactly. So if you look into even the groups of 20, and South Africa's representation there, it is the only country that has been put on such a list. And then also, it goes back to what I've said, the implication that now South Africa's financial have been undermined globally. So that means that the interaction of these entities with the global world, with your financial, your foreign or your global financial systems, it's going to be risky, meaning it's going to be risky in a sense that people factor in the risk in pricing. So that means as South Africa interacts globally, then the cost for South Africa then automatically goes up.
Okay,
so
so
it
much.
goes back to what I said when I spoke about implications.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us and, of course, bringing us up to speed with the understanding around South Africa being placed on a grey list. It's been grey listed, not blacklisted, so there is some hope.